Hello, everybody, and welcome to Monday night. And I think we just followed the right intro. I don't know.
Maybe.
There was 1 minute it was supposed to be MJ, then it was something about like some other person who doesn't even exist anymore, and then it was us, I think. So anyway, thank you very much for taking time to join us tonight. I know tonight's topic is a hot button tonight. That everybody's got. I shouldn't say everybody, but as things are starting to open across the country, proms are suddenly becoming the tip of everybody's tongue. I know it's been the hot topic, or at least I've gotten more phone calls and emails in the last couple weeks than I have in the last couple years, I feel like, just because everybody's trying to get it all crammed in all at once. So tonight's going to be a fun topic, and hopefully you're going to learn something, and if not about what you're personally going through, what some of your buddies across the country are going through.
And I think what's interesting with this year's prom season, and really this upcoming wedding season also, is that there are a variety of different rules around the country. And tonight's show is going to be talking with the prom and a little bit with weddings and what rules and such. But really, in general, is that we've run into situations where there are rules in place, whether it's by the venue, by the family, or the main people involved with putting the event on. There are rules that sometimes we have to play by, and we're going to kind of dig into that a little bit of how we handle that in a way that's going to be able to keep whoever made these rules and is trying to enforce the rules happy, and yet still be able to, on our side, to keep our reputation as whatever type of DJ we are flowing. So we're going to talk kind of the prom, and we're going to kind of evolve into that process tonight.
Nice.
Okay. Just
so should we before we get into too far, should we set MJ up? So MJ, every week we've been talking about a theme, and every week you've been matching it with your shirt. How are you doing it this week?
I just want to say that I think that I did it like a ninja this week.
No, you didn't, because I figured it out before the show. And the other one, like last week's, was the ninja one, because that was on your back.
No, that's just, I don't know what you would call that one. But I thought this one, when I'm thinking, I don't have a prom shirt. I'm like, well, maybe I should go buy a tux shirt. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to waste the money on a shirt I'll wear once. Then I'm thinking, wait, I have a promo only shirt. So tonight we're talking about prom only. But we're not actually talking about prom only. We're talking about other stuff. So I want to ask a question at the top of the hour before we dive into anything. This is probably a thing that, because I'm not as deep into that world as you guys are. Do they still do morps?
What's a morp?
What? You don't know what a morp is?
John, am I showing how young I am? Maybe I don't know.
Am I showing how old I am? Maybe
be it, possibly. You know what a morp is?
I don't. No.
It's a backwards prom where the girl asks the guy, you dress down. It is done with the same. She gives him a flower as opposed to him giving her. It's all done backwards.
I've always heard that called Sadie Hawkins and not related to prom.
Well, Sadie Hawkins is just the girl asks the guy. There's nothing to do with the clothing. There's nothing to do with anything. Morp is intentionally opposite. Dress down, the whole 9 yards.
That would be actually kind of interesting, because then you start the evening off with disappointment, and then you build to
more disappointment.
They do the pictures and everything, but they're done as like really cheesy, bad looking pictures, or they'll do filters to make them look like old instant, photograph stuff. And yeah, I didn't know. Well, apparently they're not doing them anymore.
I've not heard that.
Well, or just never in my area, at least. I mean, maybe it's a Pittsburgh thing.
I've heard other people, but again, it was a long time ago.
Must be.
Yeah, even Darkside in the chat. Morp.
Yeah, exactly. We got Robin, Nathan, DJ Mikey, Mikey Mike, Mr. T. Thank you guys for being with us here tonight. We got some folks jumping in all over the with the different Facebook groups and such.
Enough about my shirt. Enough about Morp. John, where are we going with this tonight?
Well, let's kind of start with what kind of brought this to the forefront is in Minnesota, and I just shared the YouTube link for those of you out on Facebook if you want to jump into the YouTube. In Minnesota, we're getting ready for prom season. They most of them start this upcoming weekend for the next few weekends in a row. What has changed up here? Typically, we're in high school gymnasiums. We might be in a venue, a reception hall, and doing a typical dance with maybe some food, what have you. Because of COVID, there are limitations. The capacity limitation generally isn't a big problem unless it's watching the Grand March, which some schools, this was a huge fundraiser. There was actually a school that I used to DJ for 20 some years ago, and they were charging $10 a head for the parents to come in, and they were making $10,000 to $12,000 off the Grand March, and it was their prom fundraiser. It was really kind of impressive how they did, but they would do the Grand March and do their thing. Anyway, so in Minnesota, they're changing that. So the Grand Marches, you have to have each couple can get 4 tickets. So basically, parents, and then they have to sit in the stands, but they have to be 6 feet away from any other parents. When the kids get to the venue, the kids have to come in one door, and they stay away from all the parents who go in a different door. Then they do the Grand March thing, and then after the Grand March thing is done, the kids basically are having to stay 6 feet away from other pods. A pod of students is 6 students who have been pre-selected or pre-designated to be together for the whole night. You might be the red wristband pod, you might be the blue wristband pod, whatever it is, you're going to stay with these 6 kids. So when you need to go somewhere to go eat, well, you can go up into a separate room, which is designated to only have a few kids in it, and they are sitting like 20 feet apart to eat for the night, to get some food. Then if they need to go to the bathroom, all 6 have to go down, and you're basically the only ones who can use the restroom during that period of time. So this is kind of how Minnesota is doing it, setting up these rules for prom. Dance floor, depending upon the school, all of them have to have it where the pod of 6 kids have to stay away from another pod of 6 kids. So some schools are going and making a grid on the dance floor, and you have your quadrant. You are in row 7, spot 3. That's your quadrant, and that's where the red little group is going to be all night long when they're dancing, and you cannot intermingle or mix with any other groups because of this the whole COVID thing. So there's a lot of rules that Minnesota is going through this year with that, and it's like, as an entertainer, how do you deal with rules especially when they're at that level, and you know that that's going to affect what you do as a performer?
So all 3 of us have some background in education in some form or fashion, whether it's just been the original schooling or whether it's been actually, in the classroom and teaching. And I think I could quickly say that anybody who's a parent is probably going to even be able to agree with this statement of, so the people who made up those rules have never met a child before, let alone an adolescent child at a school dance. That's my statement right there. Like I'm just flabbergasted that they think that's even going to work.
And the schools are trying to figure out how to make that work. And again, the one is happening in an ice arena, so they have a huge space.
Yeah, and
they're going to make the grid. I believe they're going 10-foot squares wide, and I think they're going 4 deep, so they'll have 40 quadrants. Another school, what they're doing is no dance floor whatsoever. They're having round tables that will handle 6 students. And the tables are 10 feet apart, and the students can only dance while standing around their table.
There's a few bars that are doing that, they actually literally cover the dance floor with the round tables, and that's how they get away with that loophole.
Yeah, it wasn't me who developed that plan, but it's a consistent one that we're having explained to us from administrators.
Are the quadrants separated via some sort of electric fence? Because we have to see it working.
Yeah, and that becomes a real question: is that how, and the vice principal was at one of the planning sessions, and she's pretty confident that the kids are going to be responsible, and they're going to, they'll have adults, chaperones in and around the area to police this, and she thinks it can be done.
So the chaperones are going to.
I was going to ask how they're going to have to go above normal numbers on chaperones.
But then we get to the problem of we've got too many people in a small space. Where are the chaperones going to stand? Are they going to be by the DJ booth? Well, maybe that'll be then too many people by me.
Are they paintballing people? Like, you get back to your square!
Yeah, exactly. After 3 paintballs, you are out.
That's right.
So let me put it this way. Let me start by saying I think the idea that they came up with was a proactive one for them to be able to have the event. And I do, I say that he'd never had a kid before, and because the logistics of it is crazy, but I do applaud them for coming up with something that is it sounds like extremely detailed, and well thought out of how can we make it so that they can still have their event and yet we can be extremely as safe as extremely possible and that kind of thing. So I do applaud that aspect to it. However, I'm shocked by this. And I know for me, the first question I would have, and John, I don't know if this is something you're planning on going to later or right now, but
Go ahead. No.
the first question I would pose back to any group that came to me and said, listen, these are the rules. This is what we're running into. I would be like, listen, I'm more than happy to be a part of your event, but I'm not going to be your chaperone of that square.
Exactly.
Meaning I'm not going to be on the microphone every 5 seconds telling group blue that, listen, you can't go over next to group red. Your chaperones are going to have to be the ones to monitor that. And if they're not happy with it, then they send them, because
who's going to be that
you're
person?
going to be talking over every song nonstop.
Somebody on Facebook mentioned that they just DJ'd a school dance with Square this past weekend. Unfortunately, I can't see who that is. Can whoever that is? All it shows up on my thing is Facebook user. I can't see which chat or anything or which one you came. All I know is you were on Facebook. Their comment though is, I just DJ'd a school dance over the weekend. The kids had to stay in a large square with masks and. Whoever that is, can you put your name in and what state that was, please? That would be.
Do you think some of this is not for I don't even know how to word this. It's not like they don't expect it to be covered by the law, but it is.
It's a CYA. Is what it is.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Do you think that's some of that's probably what that's for? That they do not expect to achieve their goal. They just expect to have a goal.
Well, I think one of the things that they're also kind of struggling with is the idea of being able to have it before the school year's up.
Yep.
Because this is a way that they can have the event, and in theory, if they do have to contact trace, they know where they were, they knew who they were by, because not only do they have, listen, you're not supposed to go, but this is your group. So rather than, oh crap, we had an outbreak, everybody and their brother was next to everybody, all right, we're shut down for a week or two or whatever might happen to be the case because of nothing else, contact tracing.
Yeah.
As well as preventing a huge outbreak, because that's just good. Yeah, like you said, I mean, that's going to be a liability potential issue coming back on the school of, like suddenly everybody's got it. And it's like, oh, well, school, they did this. And they didn't follow this.
And that's the thing is, as we're seeing pictures, somebody mentioned Alabama. There's people in the chat room, and thank you guys for sharing what's going on in your neck of the woods. It's great information. But some of the states that are wide open, and they have no masks. It's been prom like prom 2018-19 was. Nothing had changed in that. And then, of course, we've got others. That was Jerry from Pennsylvania. Again, Jerry, thank you for letting us know. That was talking about the kids dancing in squares. Jerry, how did that? Can you comment on that? How did it work? Did the kids stay in their quadrant or their little square all night, or did these squares all of a sudden get a lot closer and closer as the night went on?
I'd also want to know what part of PA. I'm curious to see if that's a county type of thing that's maybe implementing it, or we've talked about Philly has kind of their own rules from Philly, so maybe if it's either a suburb or even an in city for that.
Olin made a comment about having a prom in a parking lot. That was one of my thoughts, that you should do prom like a drive-in theater where you had your little speaker in your little area, and then have the DJ up on the big screen, and that could be a really working prom.
Let's see. I want to get back to Mr. T. We're going to get back to your question up above, but there's one. Olin Taylor from Houston. Just DJ at first prom of the season this past Saturday. The only restrictions were mask while dancing or walking around. So that's coming to us from Texas tonight. Alabama, Nathan just expired the mask mandate. State, everything is open. So.
it blows me away that things can be that way in this country. You know, I understand that there are variations in the amount of people who do have it or get it, but to have something that vastly different.
That's the tough part. And Jeremy Lanby is a prime example of that for you guys. Jeremy Lanby's a guy who covers a lot of the trade shows with me. Jeremy's located kind of on the border between Minnesota and North Dakota. Minnesota is fairly tight with restrictions. North Dakota is basically everything's done. You know, as far as North Dakota is concerned, you know, COVID is over and life has gone back to whatever it was, even though the cases are very similar in the going up phase right now. So Jeremy just did a prom this past weekend, and it was a nice little school, and you'd see the pictures of it, and the kids are all on top of each other. As he said, there was no sign that COVID even exists anymore, or was a concern. Beyond, he said, I think there were 5 or 6 people who wore their mask in when they came in, and then after that, that was the end of it. So, you know, it's just that inconsistency, especially for those like Jeremy who can work in 2 areas. And you guys have had that where somebody drives an hour and they're back to work again. And if they are in your neck of the woods, they aren't working. And that's makes it really difficult because in Minnesota, we had people who went over the border into South Dakota and went to some large events. And then they came back, a family came back from a South Dakota event. And 10 days later, they all had COVID, and then they spread it to another round of people up here. And it's just this thing that's without that consistency one way or the other. It seems to have carried it a lot longer.
I think we're going to see that. That's what when people were talking about once things get open up. We said this 4 or 5 weeks ago on this show that it's going to be gray. It's going to be confusing. It's going to be messy. It's not cut and dry. If you have it in your area and it stays that way, wide open, lucky you. But I think the rest of us are going to be push and pull for a while. I mean,
David mentions in Central Missouri that they've only got 12 active cases in their county. We live in a zip code. We live in a zip code of 1,400 people in my zip code. And in our zip code, we have, I think, 15 active cases.
I had that many in my high. I had way more. I had 300 people in my graduating class.
Yeah.
Imagine living in an area, and we considered the town we lived in a small town. Wow, we are the city compared to John.
So Jerry, thank you again for your sharing with us tonight. The kids did a pretty good job of staying in their designated squares. The organizer kept asking me to go on the mic and make announcements and reminders. So that's interesting, and that's really what the vice principal was thinking, is that these kids, after not having anything last year, are going to take this so seriously that they're going to have success. Want to try to have success with this. Because really, we're talking only a few weeks away from graduation. And if for some reason, getting kind of back to what Dan was saying, is if it catches and it spreads and they can't have graduation, there's
and that would be on the school to also kind of follow through of like, listen, this is the deal. We're able to have prom, but you all need to be aware that if we do, you got to follow the rules or graduation might be out. Yeah. And almost had that scare tactic. But again, and some kind of even mentioned it before, you know, it was up there in the chat where, you know, these are seniors for the most part, and you're getting close to graduation time. Like, you know, some of them just have this mentality of like, listen, you can't tell me what to do. And, you know, I've gone over a year now and I haven't gotten it. I'm going to have fun tonight, you know, and have that philosophy and, you know, as long as you have an entity, whether it's the school or whether it's the venue or whether it's somebody following through with follow the rules or you're out, then it's gonna, you know, that's, if you don't follow through with that, you're gonna have major issues.
And that was one of the problems with a couple of the schools that typically have mid-May. They usually were the ones who were at the very end of prom season, so they could sometimes get a little bit better discount because typically the last weekend of April and the first one of May are the two big weekends here for prom in Minnesota. Then you'd have some that would jump ahead of Easter so they could get a cheaper rate, in essence, an off-season rate. But then then it would kind of start to get closer to those two big weekends. And then there were schools who went beyond that. So that you get the second weekend of May, which can be Mother's Day weekend. And then the third weekend of May occasionally. Like in this particular case, what is May 15th, it's a
Saturday.
It's a Saturday, and that would be technically, if I'm not, that's the third one, yeah. So that is a target weekend that I think we've had 3 schools that have asked about that weekend. Well, the problem is that a lot of our schools in Minnesota do graduation Memorial Weekend. And if they all come back is that, okay, so let's say we have one student that comes down with COVID and was in that group on the 15th. Everyone is taking their 10 days to 2 weeks, and they're going to miss graduation. And
you said something at the top of the hour that I think that we kind of need to point out and make sure that it's focused is the fact of people. John was talking about, kids in his area, it's kind of growing in the schools a little bit, and their numbers aren't going to show up on anybody's count because they're just staying home. They're not getting tested. They're not going somewhere where a number counts. So people, you may say you have a certain number in your area, but the number could be higher. I have friends who knew they had it, but absolutely refused to let anybody know because they literally did not want to add to the statistic is what they said.
Yeah.
I don't want to add to those numbers. So,
and we're seeing that. And thankfully, most of these kids younger are sick for a few days and they move on, which has been great. But that's out there as part of this.
I just looked at the numbers real quick out of curiosity. We're talking about numbers in areas. Our county has almost 47,000 people in this county, and there's 381 cases, and we're still on a very big kind of lockdown. So, again, numbers. It's what was it, 7% or something? What did the guy say in the chat? He said something about percentage in his area. I can't remember what it was. And
in the chat room, they're talking a little bit about doing outdoor events. And I think the biggest concern, because that was something that all of them have talked about or even have as a backup plan. I think the reason why the outdoor event, and this is getting back to being an educator, is how difficult it is to contain students. When you're in a open space or a space that have lots of doors and lots of dark corners, kids find those open spaces and dark corners type of thing.
Well, you say that, but the schools around me, that's what they're doing. With the exception of one
dark spaces.
Yeah,
and
exactly. And no, they're doing the tents because we don't have a lot of venues in the area that can support the wide spread out that they would need to do.
Yeah.
The schools aren't necessarily large, but a lot of the venues top out at 250, 300. And so, if they have it open for juniors and seniors, great, no problem. Except for now we have to create the distance. And so therefore it creates a problem. Also, just even though there was still some of the up in the air of restrictions and what they were going to be allowed for indoors. And if it's an indoor event, that now it's not even just that, but it's 50% capacity. But that was kind of a recent thing. It was like, okay, we're going to allow proms, but we don't know what we're going to be allowed in the venue. So a lot of them went right to tents, or there's like 2 venues that are larger. And so a couple of them kind of got gobbled up pretty quick. I have a prom. We're doing it the very last weekend in May, which is kind of a little scary because exactly what you were talking about, John, if they do end up having a quarantine, graduation is the second week in June. So most likely we're talking they're going to be stuck. But we're doing it outside. It's on the football field, and that's where they're putting the tent. So that idea of making sure that they can't go anywhere, in order to get into it, you have to go into the stadium's like gates.
Oh, nice.
If you will.
Nice. Yeah.
Because so it does have that restriction. Now, what are some of the other ones doing? I don't know. I knew they were outdoors. I wasn't available. So like the conversation stopped before I even got any more details.
Sure.
But yeah. And Zen's right. They do for those dark quarters indoors too.
Yeah. Oh, certainly they do. And having,
that's how they, that's
especially
how
when it's at a hotel.
They hire the DJs. Which one of you has the brightest lights? You're getting the job.
And we want that lit up like the So yeah, it's going to be an interesting time because again, some areas are wide open. I think what we're seeing in Michigan, how things are changing there, and the talk today for those if you're not in that vicinity of the country, they're talking now about maybe adding restrictions once again, and even in states in which there are wide open right now. I mean, the reality of the situation is that what's moving up north, if the vaccine isn't catching or isn't utilized enough, or for whatever reason, it could be anywhere. Could expand, and will we get into venues throwing restrictions out? I mean, we had that last fall, some venues telling DJs to say, you can't dance, you got to stay by your table. That was the reality for some DJs last fall, and some made it work, and some were in a spot where 5 minutes after they started, everyone's like, woohoo, and it was the end of it, and it was 2019 again.
Mm-hmm.
I told you, gray, muddy, confusing. Kind of like my love life.
Yeah.
No, that's non-existent.
That's non-existent.
There's no gray and muddy about it. It's
that's pretty cut and dry there, I think is what you're saying.
Oh my
okay,
goodness.
it's true. I'm not going to deny it.
It's
So-
okay.
We did have someone like me on one of the social media apps the other day, and I considered that pretty much scoring for me.
There you go.
So somebody asked, Mr. T asked early in the process, when you're in a civic center or, a hockey arena or something to that effect, the concept of, okay, now we have to bring up a larger sound system. And this really is going to become, I think, something we're actually going to touch on what it takes tomorrow night with Ben Stowe in that idea, because we might be finding ourselves, instead of wanting to have a sweet spot in a 30 by 30 dance floor sound coverage area, to where we might be needing to do a 60 by, a 60 foot wide space or whatever. In my case, it's going to be 100 feet by about 30 to 40 feet deep, because beyond that, about 70 feet away, that's the other side of the ice area, the boards over there, and they're wanting to have games during the prom. So they want to get as good a sound on the dance floor, but yet not have it interfere with it if they're trying to have some conversation over there. Obviously, they'll have to talk loud, but they still want to be able to talk or to communicate with the kids. So it's going to change the dynamics of what we do. And it's like, okay, so how does a person contract and plan and charge to some extent? Because, my regular show is $45. Well, now I need really somewhat specific equipment.
I know people who are mine's quick, Dan. I know people who are currently purchasing wireless setups for speakers just to be prepared for something because they don't know what's coming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think you almost have to plan for kind of those bigger events anyway. But just because your logistic is kind of a little bit different, but and this is probably a Ben Stowe comment that it depends. But no, with that, think about when you have all those students that are in a mass on the dance floor, trying to reach those back corners oftentimes are a little bit more difficult unless you're able to get it really above them, because just those bodies are going to absorb a lot of it. So now the fact that they're going to be spread out, your sound breakthrough is actually going to be a little bit easier. So depending upon, unless you're going to have that, really wide and narrow, for lack of better terms, I don't foresee it creating as much of an overkill as what you might think it would be first off. I can see where you might have to add an extra set of speakers for the spread, but not necessarily to compensate for deepness, because it's going to travel maybe a little bit easier than what it would have before.
John, about your scenario is one I have a question about. Arenas like that are notoriously bad for slapback.
Yeah.
So how is that? Do you think that's going to affect a lower sound that's not overpowering the slapback?
Well, and that's one of the things why I'm kind of looking at maybe doing, instead of a horn loaded, which is typically what I would do with a high school dance, is using a 15 and a horn and then dual subs below it. I'm really toying around with using the Evolve 50s, because I'm wondering if I will get less of that slapback because of their waveguide on the front of those, on top of the Evolve 50s. So kind of envision a rectangle and the DJ set up on one of the long sides of the rectangle. I'm almost thinking, we'll have our booth, and then we'll have, Evolve 50s, probably 4 of them, kind of doink doink, and maybe set in between the Evolve 50s, probably set a couple of 18-inch subs just to give some base reinforcement on that side. And I was thinking, okay, so then maybe we could do, if we do time alignment and try to, offset, just take them out of phase just a hair bit, so then we don't have the cancellation going on. But I wonder, because of us being so wide, if we're just not going to be like really almost 2 separate dance floors, and maybe even 3. You've got
they might like that, yeah.
The left 2, the center 2, and the right 2 speakers type of thing. And it's only 4 speakers, but the idea is there's going to be that kind of a width. So
keep in mind that with those Evolves, like you were talking about, when I just blanked on the name of the company who made the original that started that trend. Bose.
Yep.
Those were originally not created for DJs. Those were created as monitors for a band, so that it was put on the stage, 2 in the front, 2 in the back, all pointing towards the center. So in that self, you could be utilizing those for kind of what they were originally thought up by an engineer somewhere, so that could be a possibility for something that's very trendy that many of them have, that you could utilize as a positive. So
yeah, that when the very first time, there were very few DJs using the Bose when they first came out, and I had called in and I was talking to the Bose person, and he's like, "Yeah, no, they're not made for DJs." It's like, but
I love it when DJs. No, trust me, they were not.
They're not made for DJs. You're not going to be happy with it, because at that time there wasn't. I think it was setting 57. It was either setting 56 or 57. That was the DJ setting. When I bought the very first ones, that didn't exist yet. So you had to go through and it's like, okay, this one was live, this one was not, and this one's what, and you're trying to find something that sounded somewhat decent, and then you eventually just went flat, and then you tried to make it sound good on EQ.
Are you and Ben going to talk about stuff like that tomorrow?
Yeah, we're going to dig into what is going to be in the best interest of those types of spaces and such. But it just adds another layer of the unknown to what we're doing. There's going to be rules. We don't know what those are. We're going to have to help enforce rules, maybe, kind of, sort of. And then we don't know exactly what it's going to look like until maybe the week before, type of a thing. It's going to be kind of a crazy time.
Messy, blurry, confusing.
Yeah, exactly. And
I'm getting a shirt, the messy and blurry and
yeah, that's going to be the 2021 entertainment calendar.
Maybe that's why I'm doing so well throughout this whole lockdown and separation thing, because it's my normal life and my normal brain function. So and now I feel normal now.
Yeah,
I'm afraid when it goes back to being open again, because whatever.
It's interesting. There was an article about that where some extroverts were starting to kind of adapt and become more of an introvert, and finding out that, hey, you know what? This is pretty nice. And they're wondering, is it part of the human condition where we kind of evolve and just make the best of our situation, or are some of the people who used to be like, oh, I've got to be going everywhere, doing everything, are going to be like, I'm good with this. I can.
It is years of FOMO conditioning, fear of missing out. Mm-hmm. That's all it is. If I don't go to that party, that's all it is. If you get rid of FOMO, life's good, man. I mean, it's just like everything's irie, man. I don't mean to insult anybody by doing an accent. I apologize. I know people, but I'm just saying I do both. I was out Saturday networking with some DJs because I told you the casino is one of the few places that you can actually get into and do stuff. And they have 2 different areas, and people were DJing there. And I went down to network, and ended up, this lady asked me a question about something. I'm talking with her, and the one DJ is like, "What was that all about?" And I'm like, "I was just using my people skills, even though I don't like people." And she just looked at me like, I'm like, "But it is that, I'm not the big people person, but I do have those skills very well to be able to talk and communicate." But in this situation, the way things are, like I said, it's fitting me more. And it's an interesting place that it has put us all when it comes to socially, because all the rules are out the window. No rules, confusing, blurry,
confusion,
messed up,
easy.
Yeah. So it's something that I think it's going to, people who adapt well, I think they're going to flourish in this, whether they're an outward going person or you know, a kind of stay behind the scenes person. If you adapt well, I think you're going to flourish, because that's one of the key things. I did a study years ago of people who lived over 100 years old, and they all had three things in common: high calorie intake, high fat intake, and they all dealt with change great. Like, as in, if someone passes away, they dealt with that. If something stops, if a company stops making a product, they dealt with that. And that's one of the things I think through this, the people who are going to shine are the ones who can adapt.
Mm-hmm.
And have high calorie intake.
See, I'm in all those. You know, I don't want to be on this earth forever, but the life I live, exercising, all the hiking I'm doing lately, running, all these things, I'm probably going to live way beyond what I want to live. So I'm trying to take care of my body, because if I have to be here for a while, I want a body that can still move around and do
still
stuff.
get away from people. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. So I want my legs to work so I can leave people. Yeah. No.
Okay, so let's talk a couple of scenarios here, and I want you guys out in the chat rooms to kind of pipe in with this also. I'll throw out the situation, and then we're going to talk about it. But I want to hear what you guys are thinking when it comes to rules or the expectations. Now, if you have a situation where you have, let's say, the state and has rules for what a venue needs to be doing and what's supposed to be their expectations, that the state says you can only do this. Then the venue says, basically, we're going to do whatever the hell we want. Which one would you, as an entertainer who are there to do at the event, are you going to hedge more towards what the state requirement is? Let's say it's just even as something as simple as that you're supposed to be wearing a mask. You got to be wearing a mask. And the venue says, no one here is going to wear a mask tonight. Which one would you lean towards? Would you lean towards the state requirement or the venue requirement? Put that into the chat room here on this. And what Dan, MJ, what are your thoughts?
I just saw someone in the chat room shout out for my Wheelie Wednesday. That's coming tomorrow. Along with, I'm having a great show. I just want to make sure everybody knows this before we do it before the end of the show. Wednesday night over on Twitch, we're doing a music listening party. That means I'm playing cool versions of stuff. You're going to tell me versions of stuff. I'll look it up. It's all about exchanging music ideas. So that's tomorrow night, Wednesday night, 9 p.m. But I myself am one of those people. I think you hashtagged at one time, John, follow the rules or something like that. What was it? And I'm like, something like, that's me. I'm a rule follower. That's just what it is. I believe in rules because I think it adds an order that where one person can't do whatever they want while someone else is trying to follow the rules. So, you know, it's someone will go, oh, that's your fault for following the rules. No, you're the one that's going to ruin it for everybody else. So I'm a firm believer in rules. If the state says wear a mask, I'm having a mask on, even if I'm told take the mask off. I'm like, I'm going to wear a mask. I'm just a rule follower.
Yeah, and as am I. As a parent, this is one of the things that it doesn't matter what the rules are to a point, obviously, but it's rules. If the rules are there, there's laws there. We need to abide by them. I don't want to be teaching my kids that there's, you know, we like these rules, so we're going to follow these, and we don't like these rules because then we're not going to follow those. That's just not how it goes. And again, there's no judgment in this. You guys put in what everyone's going to have a different opinion on this.
I want to hear Dan's opinion, both as three things: as a DJ, as a parent, and as an educator.
Oh yeah.
So let me see. Let's figure out which one would fit into which category. Let's start with the parent. The parent side is, you know, exactly as you guys said. I'm the rule follower. I'm going to do what I'm expected to do, and I'm going to abide by it. The DJ side of it goes, I'm going to attempt to follow the state rules because I'm going to walk in, I'm going to start doing my thing, and then nobody's going to be around me, and the mask is going to start bugging me, and it's going to suddenly come off, and then I'm going to put it back on when I leave my area or when I go to walk around. But when I'm up by myself and nobody's near me, it's coming off and it's staying off for as long as I can. Also, because I don't like the muffled on the mic sound. As an educator, if I'm a chaperone or I'm being the school entity or I'm a representative of it, I'm putting it on and I'm leaving it on and I'm figuring out a way to make it work just because, first off, it could cost me my job type of thing. You know, I don't want to create that bad light, and I don't want to create a liability issue for myself either. So I guess that would be the way the three goes. And I say about the, taking the mask off just because that's what ended up happening last year in the fall. I've some of you guys saw in the DJNTV group. I'm still kind of looking for some new masks. I've had a couple of people suggest things. The problem that I run into is you can't return a mask, and so I don't want to drop $40 for a mask that might not work for me.
Yeah.
So I keep trying some different things. So I think I found one that maybe will work. I got it the other day, and I'm going to try it for a longer time. But last fall, like I would have them on, and nobody would have them on, or they would show up and then they would lose it, and then it would get enough where it got annoying for me, and so I would take it off. I would also say it also depends upon the size of the event too. I'd realize one person could be enough to infect me, but if I'm in a large group, like if it's a large school dance type of environment, I'm probably more apt to leave it on. Whereas if I'm at a small wedding, 7,500 people, it's a little different. If they're more spaced out, I don't feel like they're on top of me as much.
John, can I throw a curveball into this?
Yeah, I've got one more scenario that we'll wrap up with. So go ahead.
What if it's not the state rule to wear a mask or not a mask, but what if you have your vaccine pass and it says you don't have to wear a mask, but other people do?
Yeah, that would get really, really ugly.
Think about that. A venue goes, unless you can show us, because that's what the mask does. It doesn't save you from getting something. It saves other people from getting what you have. So that's the science, their science behind it. Mm-hmm. But think about that. If you, as a DJ, let's say I don't have the shot and Dan does have the shot, he can go without a mask. I have to wear one. Then what do you do? Take another gig, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, that's going to be.
Mine still goes to that comfort level. Although I'm a little bit more comfortable ditching it at that point because here's my card.
Right. That's half the reason. If you saw our show a couple weeks ago, that was half the reason why I'm thinking about getting a shot, just so that for things like that, if that does come up, that's going to be a blessing for me not to have to wear the mask. That's all. So it's going to be messy and blurry and confusing.
Yeah, very much so. Last scenario, guys, then we got to wrap up.
Right. Oh, sorry. Sorry.
State, no requirements, no mandate whatsoever. So we're just state's wide open. Venue says we are so concerned about our guests. We want people to stay apart. We want everyone to be masked unless they're eating or drinking. And we want to make sure that we're safe as possible, that they're not congregating in groups. Couple says, don't care. We're going to have a party. Venue very tight. Couple doesn't care. They're like, yeah, we want to do it our way. Which one do you follow? Do you follow the couple or the venue that wants it tighter? Dan, you can go first since MJ went first last time.
So I would want to know a little bit more what the venue is asking me to do. Because is the venue asking me to abide by the rules? Yeah, I'll play by the rules. It's their house, their rules. If they want me to wear a mask, I'm going to wear a mask. And hopefully Bobby and Susie can be fine with it because I basically would have that conversation with them. Like, listen, I understand your venue's in that scenario, but I also got to realize that I may be going back there next week. And while you guys are completely fine with it, whatever, the next couple's not. And so the venue does have to understand that I have to play by their rules. Now, if the venue is asking me to reiterate those rules 8,000 times, and that's another thing I got to have with the conversation I've got to have with the couple to basically be like, listen, you two need to come up to an agreement here because I'm going to be stuck between the two of you. All right. Because your venue is having these rules and you're saying we don't care. And that's fine if you feel like you're not going to abide by it. But I can tell you right now, they want me to be mentioning this 8,000 times tonight. And I know it's going to tick off your guests. So we've got to be aware that, listen, this is the rules that your venue is putting me in. MJ?
It's again, for me, it's a rule following thing that I would have to clarify that I'm just one of those people that communicate. So I would have to put the couple and the venue in the same spot to where they hear each other and they both know that I'm going to be wearing a mask because the venue asked me to wear a mask. You all can do what you want, but it is not going to be my job to police you because I'm following my rule I'm following your rule. So if you want to enforce it, that's your job to enforce it. It's like a smoking thing. If it's a non-smoking venue, I'm not going to be running around telling people don't smoke. It's your venue, your rule that's specific to your place. Like if it was your house and you said no smoking in your house, or you say you have to wear a mask in your house, that's your job to uphold that, because I'm also a guest in your house that night. So I would leave it up to the venue. And if it became such a thing where the venue's like, no, you're going to have to say stuff, I would say, folks, I'm not the person for this gig, because I think anywhere in between there, I think it could get really messy.
Yeah.
And that's what I would be afraid of.
Mm-hmm.
Where I find a lot of people getting stuck with that potential problem is, though, as mandates are changing, as rules are changing, because things are starting to open up, you may, or you were booked for this before COVID was a thing. I mean, I've got a couple events on my calendar that were booked before COVID. And so, when they hired me, there was no worry about that. There was no worry that the venue might ask me to do this. And so that does create the potential question of, are you going to back out on your client?
Do you have it in your contract about backing out because of any civil unrest or anything like that?
No.
That was something a booking agent taught me back in the 90s, and mine has it in there for any disease, civil unrest or anything. I have the right to back out if I don't feel safe. And you could just pull that clause and say, listen, I'll work with you to find you someone if we can't find a medium spot between us and the venue. But if you're going to push it and they're going to push it, I can't be the middleman. So I would have to try my best. That's where my people person skills would come in.
Yeah,
I would try to work it out. But that's again, one of the reasons why I'm glad I don't do weddings and stuff like that, because there's so much more gray area there than a bar. In a bar, it is the bouncer's job to take care of things. I'm playing music. If I need to make an announcement, they will make it clear that I need to make an announcement. Mm-hmm. And I know that's part of my job. Even if everybody hates me for making it, I'll make the announcement. But that's all. I think that's why I like it. Clarified lines, not as muddy.
What about you, John?
Yeah, John.
Make us answer the question.
I default back to, and very similar to the rule, the whole rule thing. If there's a rule somewhere that, whether it's the couple is, really concerned and they want it, we're going to wear it. If the venue is like, in order to be here and do this is what you got to do, we're going to follow that. If the state has a mandate, I'll tell you right now, when I'm going into stores, when I'm on Thursdays delivering newspapers, I'm the only one wearing a mask 95% of the time now. It's really lagged here in the last month and a half as cases have gone down. Am I fairly safe because I've gotten one shot? I'm in and out of these stores so quickly. Yeah, I probably am, but it's kind of the rule, and I'm just going to follow that rule and be that person that follows the rule. And if people laugh and point and say I'm living in fear, that's their choice, whatever. It's the perception, or it's the guide or that I want to set for my children. Can't think of the word. Precedent. There we go. Precedent that I want to set.
And pick the bigger word, teacher.
No, I know. I need it.
I teach math.
I don't remember who I was talking to. We were gonna do a show, and they're like, I only have 10 minutes. It's like, that's okay. We'll only use short words, so we can get a lot of words in.
Right. David Wolf, that is correct. That is in my clause. I'm not joking that I put it in there. Play all music except for country. No joke.
Nice.
Just I'm in a position where I can kind of control my world. Other people aren't blessed with that. So you got to figure out what you're willing to do. And that's why I talk about flexibility, that with all these crazy things coming up to springtime and all this stuff, that's going to be my hardest thing, because for me to survive, I'm going to have to be flexible with both private gigs and mobile stuff to really make a living, I think, for a while, until stuff balances back out. So you may see me failing or quitting or getting a day job. You might see me at your local Walmart. I don't know, but just have to keep moving forward the best I can.
Yeah, there you are. Alrighty, Dan, I think we're about ready. The big thing coming up here next Monday night, we will not be doing our regular shows because we are having our virtual training night. The monthly third Monday of the month is our virtual training night. Next Monday, we are going to be having, let's see, you can go to DJNTV.com/virtual expo. That's the link to every show. We change it each month, so it goes to the new show. So let me try if I can remember everything. We've got our headliner is Mitch Taylor. Mitch Taylor is doing a presentation about around sales and such. The title of it is actually already on the webpage. Jason Jani is coming back. He's going to be kind of a regular on the Monday night virtual expos. MJ's going to be coming in there, and he's going to dazzle us with an incredible performance. Jamie Perez and Jordan Marshall are going to be coming in because they have been kind of working the last few years as a couple on their business, and they're going to talk about their experience. Don Carlo, if you were guys who were with us in Vegas, Don Carlo was there. He was Carlos that was down there with us. He's going to be speaking, and DJ Superfly will be on the agenda for the night. I think I've hit everybody. Didn't I? Yeah. So yeah, we've got a nice lineup. We're going to probably end up going a little past 10 o'clock this time Eastern, but the show will start at 8 o'clock Eastern. We're going to probably come on a little early ahead of that, but I think the first session goes on at 8:05, so we're going to do a little banter ahead of time and then be ready to go at 8:05 Eastern, and it'll take you right to 10. I haven't been to... Oh, that's MJ. So again, DJNTV.com/virtual expo will take you right to the page, and you guys can go check it out. The actual video players and such are going to be up. I'm going to get those made here in the next day or so. Just been running around with a lot of things, so this is that's just a little temporary spot, but that's where you will find the video player for next Monday night.
Very cool. Give it a quick plug for Howie coming up next with the Chill Room, DJNTV.com/chill. I forget the guy that he's interviewing.
David Sporn. Yeah, they're going to They're going to do a simulcast in the Chill Room. And if you want to watch it and you don't want to go to the Chill Room, which is DJNTV.com/chill, you can go out, go to my Facebook page. There's the link. But David's going to be broadcasting it to his Twitch page. And his Twitch page, he's got quite a few folks out there, and he's going to be doing back and forth with the two of them. So should be kind of a fun time to check it out.
Nice. Let's see. David asked about Midwest DJs Live. I know there's going to be some of our folks there, but I personally will not be going. I don't even know if I'm going to be going to any trade shows this year. It's just it's a crazy time with family and such in 2021. So as we sit now, I'm going to probably say I won't be traveling virtually at all this year, but we'll see how things happen later in the summer.
All right.
I think we're good.
All right. Well, on that note, thank you guys for taking your time out of your Monday night to join us and all the chats, whether it was Facebook or whether it was YouTube. We greatly appreciate it. There was a lot of feedback that we were coming into. We know we're not alone in this situation, and we see it because of you guys, if nothing else. And so I greatly appreciate you taking your time and your 2 cents and filling us in also what's happening in your area with your proms this year as well. Have yourself a wonderful night, and we'll see you next time. Bye.